Welcome, everybody, to another episode of The Other Side of Sales. I'm Ryan Woodard.
And I'm Ashleigh Early.
And today we have somebody who has been hugely influential in my SDR journey. She's been in the Sales for the Culture chat, helping me and other SDRs out. And so today I bring to you an SDR manager at Gong and co-founder of the Women in Sales Club, Gabrielle Blackwell.
Isn't it like 6 a.m. in San Francisco?
I'm in Chicago.
Oh God, why did I think you were in San Francisco? Okay, that makes me feel a ton better. I was like, why did we schedule this so freaking early for the poor girl?
No,
okay, Chicago.
Yeah, Woodard was like, oh no, it's 6. I was like, no, I'm good. We're fine.
Oh, perfect. Where in Chicago are you?
I live in the suburbs, Schaumburg.
No, I have
this close to me.
Huh?
I'm just down. I didn't realize you were this close to me. I'm just down in Indy.
Oh, nice. I didn't know you were there.
Look at this. We're learning new things about each other.
I know. Here we are.
Well, here's my obligatory Chicago question.
Yes.
Who are your teams and where do you get your deep dish?
Teams. Okay, so like the only teams that really like where you'd have to choose a team is baseball, and I don't care about baseball.
Fair.
So there's that piece. But I will go to a Cubs game because Wrigleyville is fun, like where the stadium is. So I definitely feel like I've had like the best time in Wrigleyville. And then best deep dish, Lou Malnati's. So like, yeah. Anybody who says any differently, I'm like, you're a terrorist. So no.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
So
I
I grew up in Seattle, so I did not understand. I didn't get it. And my husband's entire family is from Chicago. Yeah. So when I met my husband, when we lived in the States, it's one of the things we gave up moving to Europe because you cannot get deep dish over here. It does not exist. But we used to get Lou Malnati's quarterly. We get like 3 or 4 of them like free shipped, and just blew my mind.
Yeah.
So it was like, that was like one of the things, like when I finally got to go to Chicago Museum, I was like, I need to go to Lou Malnati's to taste this thing not frozen. And it's good, it's better, but I'm shocked how good it was frozen. But yeah, I love when people come in and they're saying other things than Lou Malnati's. I'm like, nah, I'm from Chicago. I'm not even from Chicago, and I know the right answer to that. Come on.
Yeah, because it's like the main ones that you're gonna run into are like Gino's East, Giordano's, Lou Malnati.
I think Giordano's the one I've heard a couple times, and it's always fun. It's always fun talking shit.
Is so good, and I'm just like, who told you that?
Yeah.
And we have it here in Indy, and it's
not great. Like, so here, and then also context as well for like what's influencing my decision is. Okay, this is gonna sound so rude, but I feel like Giordano's is with a less sophisticated palate. Like, I'll be really honest, and the reason why I say this is, like, like there are places that you go to as a kid, and like that's where like your parents always take you. Well, it suits the needs of the kids. No one has any problems, and that was Giordano's. So Giordano's is where our parents took us for like our parties and stuff like that. And we had a pizza party because we would not ever even know to appreciate Lou Malnati's.
So, I feel you on that deeply because like growing up, we had this thing called Godfathers.
Yeah.
And their whole shtick was pizza buffet.
Weird.
So you could
go. Godfather's Pizza, where I was from too.
Yeah, exactly. So it was like pizza buffet. It was super cheap. There's always a big table. So you'd always go for like after like, end of season, like sports stuff or whatever, or birthday parties. It was a great, you could feed like 15 kids for like $20.
Yep.
And all the kids could like grab your different slices. Like I would always, you could like play with the topping sort of thing. Like, and I remember this vividly. And I remember I had the chance to eat it at Godfather's again because it was still around like 10 years ago. I went to another one and I was like, nope. I get why I went here as a kid, and I get why I'm never coming back as an adult. It's like Chuck E. Cheese. As a kid, you're like, oh, it's so cool, all the equipment. And as an adult, you're like, oh my god, all the germs. Oh my god, no.
In the whole place. Ew.
Yeah, no. There's so many things like as a kid, it's like all shiny and magical, and then you look back on it as an adult, and you're like, no.
Yeah, I have my sister is like almost 7 years younger than me, so she's obsessed with Chuck E. Cheese. It's like, oh, like, let's go to Chuck E. Cheese for your sister. And I'd be there sitting the entire time like, I am full on like 12 years old right now. I should not be here.
Oh,
Older sibling troubles. I was the younger one, so I always got catered to. So
yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
that.
it happens. It happens. Listen, she can't help that she's the younger kid. I look at the parents.
No, I feel that because I'm the oldest cousin on both sides. So I was perpetually 2 to 12 years older than the youngest. And it always skews younger because the youngers can't do quite as much.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of that growing up. It's like, hey, we're gonna go see a movie. Let's go see Cheaper by the Dozen.
I think
why are you making me watch this?
So my sister really liked Winnie the Pooh, and I did not care for it whatsoever. Like they have nothing bad to say. It just didn't fit me.
It didn't resonate. It
didn't resonate. Yeah, I would watch. I mean, I liked Tigger because I was like this dude is hilarious. But beyond that, I was like, all right, you've basically got this big old bear who's got the munchies. Like, great. But my sister's room was all decked out in Winnie the Pooh stuff, right? My mom always would like to take us to go take photos, and I remember my mom came home one day and she's like, right, we're gonna take photos tomorrow. I bought an outfit for both of you, and it's Winnie the Pooh, matching outfit. Winnie the Pooh. I was like, this to me is evidence that you hate me.
I'm taking notes here because my wife and I are trying to start a family, so don't get matching outfits for siblings. Take
they have shared interests.
Yeah.
They have shared interests, but it's also like, all right, again, if my sister's like, let's say 5, for example, and I'm 12, I don't want to match with the 5-year-olds.
Yeah, that's
like, we can coordinate. We don't need to match. We don't need to be wearing these.
Yeah, like, could she do Winnie the Pooh and I do like Sailor Moon? Or something that's like,
whatever resonates. Yeah.
Cartoons.
As long as they both agree to rep.
Yeah, it just got to a point where I was like, you know what? I don't want to take photos anymore.
But I'll be devastated if my kids are like, we're Colts fans, or even the worst would be if they're like, we're Raiders or Broncos fans. I'd be like, what did I do so bad?
I'm sure
you're years that God's
if they do that, that'll be their rebellious phase. They'll come back.
Yeah.
It'll be
gonna have to learn how to cope. One of the two.
Well, one of my
I'm sure if you embrace their interests early and often, then they're likely going to then gravitate to the things that you're interested in as well. That's my thought. Yeah.
Perfect.
Don't force it. Let them come to you.
Yeah, my dad tried to force things on me like golf, and I hated it as a kid, and now I'm looking for any time I can to get out on the golf course. So,
but maybe sometimes because your dad tried to force it down your throat.
Yeah, and he was like a Vietnam vet, so there was no like negotiations. Like, it's summertime, you're not staying in the house, taking golf lessons. Like, okay.
Sorry, I'm laughing because that is literally how it went with my mother and I with music. And my form of rebellion, my parents had a rule that you always had to have a music extracurricular and a physical extracurricular. So I always was doing lessons of some kind and I had practice of some kind up until I was about 12, 13, and then they finally let go of the athletic part when they're like, yeah, this is not really her thing. She broke 5 foot at 11 and she's topped out by 15 and she is awkward as hell otherwise spraining her ankle every 6 months. Like, let's maybe not have her doing that as much. We'll pull her out of that. But my mom is actually a brilliant pianist, like really legitimately good. Probably could have gone to conservatory and done it professionally, but the 70s. So, teacher or nurse, take your pick. So she picked nurse.
I love nurses.
So, deep respect. So she actually worked at Stanford's Children for 5 years. So like she was like legit good. But so her thing was, okay, so you're gonna do piano. And I was like, I don't like piano. I never practiced. I hated it. The whole thing. I did I think she tried to get piano on piano for 4 or 5 years. And she's like, fine, you could do something, but you have to do something. So I went through a different instrument every year for like 5 years. And I finally got her to let me do singing lessons. And then that finally stuck. But the same thing was like, oh God, I really wish I paid more attention to the piano lessons. because once I got really into singing, I really needed piano to learn my music. And so I was like, okay, this hunt and peck thing really sucks. I'm terrible at this. Crap. But
my music topped out at 6th grade. Was it 6th or 7th? But I was like, really, I don't know. According to my band teacher, I was really good at the saxophone. And I had like what did he call it? Like where he can play a note and I can just play that exact same note, perfect pitch. So he was like all geeked, but then he was kind of weird and wore a fanny pack. So like the fact that he was so excited made me like, I'm not really into this. And so I was just like, nope.
The overexcited nerdy music teacher.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
Like, sorry, dude, you turned me off of this.
The thing that like, I played saxophone, was always like first chair. And then I like switched schools in the middle of 8th grade, and I just had like the most apathetic band conductor, and like who just put me in last chair. Like there was no opportunity to go for first chair. Like I'd missed, and I'd gone to like private school, was switched to public school. So all the people who had like been in the program got to go to like the
hyper preference
jazz band and things like that. So I was just like, I'm literally sitting at the end of the bench with the people who are like picking their nose the whole time. And I was like, I can't be here. This isn't, no, like I'm not playing. I'm like, boop, boop, boop.
Like great, I'm playing the bass line. Great, thank you.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Well, yeah, you go from like playing solos to
as somebody who, I feel that deeply with choirs and stuff like that, because I have a unique voice, and I didn't realize until I was about 17, 18 why it's unique. And it's unique because my specialty is opera. So we're doing all this choir work and musical theater, and I'm like, okay, I'm louder than everyone else, I'm more on pitch than everyone else, but nobody really matched. I never really got where I need to get to. I couldn't figure out why. And finally we did a medley from Phantom of the Opera, and they did some upper range tests to see if anyone could do that run Christine does at the crazy thing, and it's like, oh, Ashleigh can do that. And it was the first time I got like a legit solo, and it was great because they also got my band teacher or my choir teacher went to my mom, was like, hey, she should be doing opera. And so they throw me on opera stuff, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is what it's supposed to do. This is what my voice is liking. This is why I don't sound like
that's a great analogy.
Brittany and Christina and whatever. And I've used that analogy a lot when I talk to salespeople who are like, oh my God, I can't do sales. I can't do something. No, you're just doing the wrong sale. You're not supposed to be ABS. You're not supposed to be run rate. You're supposed to be client success. Trust me, when you get to the right spot, you know.
Yeah.
And there is a spot for you. It just sucks trying to find it. And it means you have a few years of being like, why do I suck? But you don't. What's something you think people are not talking about enough in the sales bubble?
Did we say resilience? And
yeah, I was thinking, so I don't know why I didn't think about this when Woodard reached out to me right away, because like Ashleigh, you had reached out about the submission that I had for the other side of sales survey. I mean, I can't talk too much about deets, like that would expose the company. I don't actually care anymore. They're like they don't exist anymore. But I think like within the realm of resilience and like the kinds of experiences that people can have at work. I know for myself, like I don't know if it's a matter of like, all right, hey, if it's being a woman who has a lot of opinions and isn't a yes person, like what kind of experience you can have. If there's also the component of being like a woman of color as well, who's also not a yes person. I think there are, at least the experience that I've had is like, if I were to advocate for myself of like, hey, listen, here's an experience that I'm having at work with my boss, let's say, just for example, or with a coworker of mine, for example, that seems to be off, right? It's not productive. It's not positive. It's not neutral, right? There's something sinister that's there a little bit. I feel like more often than not, like like especially women of color, like their voices aren't heard. And I think you've seen this over and over again, right? Where you have, oh, what was her name? Cynthia something from Salesforce, right? She had written an exit letter, posted it on LinkedIn, and it was talking about just like years and years of microaggressions going unheard, actually like being okay with like leaving, like being the breadwinner, stepping back from being the breadwinner in her family, right? So that she can actually take care of herself as well. I think that does go quite in line with this idea of resilience, which is it's like, right, hey, like for some folks, the hardest thing that they're going to have to figure out how to do, and maybe I'm simplifying this, right, or not fully appreciating this, could be hitting their daily activities on a day-to-day basis, right? While for others, like the hardest part of their day is the fact that they're not getting access to like the resources that they need, the support that they need, the encouragement that they need, right? Like they're not being acknowledged at all as a person, or they're only being acknowledged as a professional when there's this person behind it, right? So it's not just a matter of like hitting activities, it's also like, all right, hey, like, do I belong? Am I included? If I'm having challenges, can I express that? Will leaders be receptive to it, right? And if they aren't, what does that mean for me? And so I know from my experience thus far, like it's not anything that's specific to one company. Like this is an experience that I feel like kind of keeps happening over and over again. So I got to like, all right, well, what's the one consistency?
So
one, I'm an asshole. I don't think so, right? Or two, I think that there's something else that's at play.
One of the things that I think might be interesting is, without going into detail, one of the things that I think keeps a lot of people, I firmly believe the only way we move forward is by people stepping up and being brave and saying, no, this is not okay. And that sucks that that's the labor is on those who are in the point of disadvantage. So it's how can we help? And one of the things I think we can do is by shining a light on the fact that, to be blunt, you've been through the worst, you're okay.
Ooh, yeah.
So without being like I said, without going through a lot of details, stuff like that, but you know, we all tell these lies we tell ourselves around, if I say something, I'm going to get fired, I'm going to lose my job, I'll never work in the industry again. Fuck that. You had the shittiest of the shit happen to you, and you were at like the gold standard of the hot companies in tech right now. Like, no, it's not the end. It kind of showing through all these things. And then it's, hey, and now not only that, but now I'm free to know what I'm looking for and all that stuff. And not that it's not hard. It's not that it doesn't suck.
Yeah. I don't think it stops just because you're at a big shiny tech company.
No, it definitely doesn't.
You know?
The worst thing that ever happened to me at work happened at a big shiny tech company.
Yeah. So I think that I guess there's this piece here. I think it's not just a matter of interesting, but it's something I'm reflecting on now, is like, it's almost like every time I think of like, all right, I am free of something else pops up, right? Where it's like this, it's not like, again, it's not limited to one place or one space, right? It's like there's an experience, right? And like from my end, like I want to be careful to say, hey, listen, like you can get through this and then everything is going to be okay. Like I think this is the work that just keeps on. Like I feel like for me right now, I'm in this like place of, all right, I think there's some stat, right? So I'll share the stat, which is for Black employees, let's say, entering into the corporate space, their average tenure is somewhere between like 1 to 3 years before they stop and go and do their own thing. Right. So everyone will go, oh, wow, like this is so great, entrepreneurial. I think there also can be the experience of you recognize, like you give it your best shot for 1 to 3 years and you recognize like, wow, this is
not working.
Or it's like, is this the experience that I am bound to have for the rest of my time, right? Working in these kind of environments. And so I know so again, like I talk about this resilience piece, but I'm like, I do think it has to be more than me just being resilient, right? Like people have to be receptive as well. And so I don't know, I think this is on my heart today because there's just been like a few things happening recently where I'm like, you know what, it would be really, really easy for me to go like to end my day, lock up my computer, right? Or not, because I feel like I have to work 3 times harder because it seems as though I have to. So like, you know, I'm up. I have to power through. I have to see this as a storm. But I think that some people's storms just last longer, or people are just always in a storm in certain environments. And so like, if we're not, I think that gets discounted quite a bit, right? So I'm like, I can be resilient as much as I want to be, right? As much as I decide to be. And also at a certain point in time, like it's rough.
Well, that resonates with me because I'm not super open about it, but I because it's not my story to tell, but I live with someone with a really severe mental illness. And that's a shift I've had to make over the past month or two, as I've been in this habit of, it'll get better if we can do this. It'll be better if we can do this. It'll be better if we can do this. See, now he's getting mad. It's okay.
We're having it right now.
I know. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see what Michael does with the recording. But like it's shifting from that mindset. It'll be better if, to, you know, it's not a storm. It's just, this is what it is. And it's that resilience about, okay, so how do I shift that mindset from, okay, it'll, you know, kind of, because that just, it builds that fluctuation that is just 10 times harder on you than just being like, okay, let's just build that slower resilience. So it's okay, I'm used to, you know, how do I manage this? If it's going to stay at this level, and do I want to make that choice?
Yeah. So I think, I mean, there is a piece about the resilient, like I was having a conversation.
And not to equate in any way my experience as a white woman with the experience
no,
Black pros or anything like that, because these are all very different.
You know, I've been having this conversation recently with a few different folks. It's like, you know, execs and kind of senior leadership. Because I'm the so we call them circles. So it's like the employee resource groups at Gong, the affinity-based groups. So I run the circle for the Black employees at Gong called the neighborhood. And so some of the conversations I've been having recently with senior leadership that I would interface with in this role is, all right, hey, like, let's say that in any role, right, for any person, there are like 15 to 20 primary skills that you're going to have to develop and master. And that's for anyone and everyone. I was like, so now let's add in an identity or a demographic that is typically underrepresented. Now you have to learn another 10 to 15 maybe, such as navigating microaggressions in the workplace. So when we think about this idea of like resilience, I was in this webinar with someone, and she's like, okay, like, you know, as leaders of salespeople, especially SDRs, we can teach people resilience. When someone gives you a no, you power back. And I was like, okay, but like, what happens if that no is, so the no is coming from your prospects, the no is coming from your boss, the no is coming from the culture as well. When you log off from work, there's a lot of no's as well. So it's like, is that, you know, so I'm like, all right, hey, like, yes, I can be as resilient as possible, right? Like I can bounce back over and over again, but there also comes this time where I have to make a choice of, all right, I keep on having to bounce back. Like at what point in time do I stop having to do that? You know, that then becomes a question, like, which is, do I want to keep on having to be resilient?
And at what cost?
Yeah, it's like you deserve some peace at some point, like.
Yeah, like, so at some point in time, right, like there has to be that reprieve. You know, we talk about like, all right, psychological safety, and there's all like diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I don't know about you, but like, so I've been, I went from being like really, really outspoken about like D&I stuff to like getting a lot of backlash in the past for it, to the point where like, and it's like I was at, you know, at a company where they're like, all right, hey, we want to do DE&I. It's run by the CEO. It was a hot ass mess, right? Like it was truly a hot ass mess. And so then I also, as I was being vocal, I was retaliated against as well, right? So it's like to the point of like, hey, like you can talk about this, but not too much, right? Get back to do your job, right? Hush kind of thing. And so there is that experience as well of, all right, hey, like I can be really outspoken, I can want all these things, and when it actually comes time to you know, going into action, it's like, all right, there's now all these different barriers where you recognize, oh, we don't actually want this. You know, like we want to, you know, it's very performative, but when it actually comes time to the practical application or to be challenged, right? And it's not every organization. Like I just had a one-on-one with Amit the other day, our CEO at Gong. And I was like, I think one of the big things that I really appreciate about Gong, we're not, it's nobody's perfect, but the fact that we have receptive leadership who's willing to hear people out, who's willing to like, not just like, hey, you hear what I say, but you're also curious about why I'm saying it. Right.
Thank
and you also want to find a way to be able to contribute that much better. So it's not just a matter of, hey, we're going to do DE&I and here are my programs, but like Ryan Longfield, who's our chief revenue officer, and he's the executive sponsor of the neighborhood, right? The Black employee circle. So when we had our one-on-one the other day, and it's like, hey, like if we had this like high functioning circle, like what would we be doing? We got to brainstorm. And so it's, he's like, how about I'll share an idea and you share ideas. So it's like we're equal partners within this, and he's not waiting for me to just give him all the ideas. He's not like shoving the ideas down my throat. And I would imagine that there's probably a lot of places where it's some balance of that, where it's like, all right, hey, you're an underrepresented minority. What do you want us to do? You do
Yeah,
the
tell us what you need.
Yeah, or it's like, hey, we're gonna do DE&I, but it's gonna be on our terms and deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a similar experience to like we're gonna do DEI, and they reached out to me because I was vocal and one of the only people that was like willing to like stake a flag and die on this hill over some things. And then it like, my pushback was like, they wanted me to basically be the voice of the Black employees, and kind of put together like a safe space and give them essentially, like I said, like a voice. And
I've heard so many of these stories in the past 12 months where it's like it's tokenization, but it becomes they go to the one person who's spoken out and be like, hey, okay, can you create all this? Can you speak to leadership? Can you do this? Can you do that? It's like they
weren't even giving me that. They just wanted me to be like, and this is where I was like, I don't feel comfortable doing this, but basically like be this voice and have this group, but then, and like bubble up any issues to leadership. But then I was like, do I have a place at the table with leadership to like, where I'm seen as an equal, we can actually accomplish things? Or is this just like
well, listen, y'all, we've got Woodard over here, a good old color boy. He's taking care of all the other colored people. Sorry, that was like that was obnoxious, but like that's really what it is.
Yeah. And then when I post it that way, then like HR is like, oh, we'll talk to leadership, and then it just never went anywhere, and I ended up leaving anyway. So
yeah,
it was strange. Like there is, when you're talking about resilience, I think about how elated I was to get into tech sales, and then the like utter realization that I sold like heavy equipment, so like big wheel loaders and material handlers, and I'm selling to like farmers, steel mill workers, definitely like blue collar type workers. And honestly, I met probably some of the best human beings like in that field, that instead of going in with like any kind of preconceived notion about anybody, just going in and like starting a conversation and meeting these guys. Like I'll throw out some names like Jason up at Rochester Iron and Metal in Rochester, Indiana, Chris Beaver in Noblesville. And then to go to tech sales and have an individual that was in marketing. He put himself out as like this enlightened individual that was self-aware. One day comes up, and as my dreads were my locks were in the infant stages, tries to touch them, and I like matrix, oh, what are you doing, dude? Like, no, I don't play that. Don't do that. And then like 2 or 3 weeks later, maybe he like waited this time because he thought like, oh, he'll forget about that incident. And like, I thought since I had explained that don't do that one time, that it would just be like, it's pretty clear, don't do it ever. And he just like ambushed me one time, like came up and like, I was just gonna like give him a cool handshake, and he was just like, oh, touch my hair. And like, it took everything in me not to just like have it when keeping it real goes wrong and lose my job.
I was gonna say, I'm surprised you didn't hit him, because
I know that might have been a reflex.
I think it was just like the shock that like you really did that. Like,
that's the audacity.
Yeah, right? And that you put yourself out there as a spiritual person, and you talk about the universe, and so it's like, typically we think that somebody that's going to do that is, you're racist, I hate Black people, but it's not. It's they come in all different shapes and forms.
I would honestly, this is what my grandma told me. She grew up in she grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, like under Jim Crow, segregated everything. And she's like, it used to be way easier back in my day, right? Where she's like, people were really upfront about what they thought. doing what they believed. And so you knew what you were dealing with. And so there is that, like, that's where I kind of get back to, like, there's like, I don't know if it's like whether it's, you want to call it unconscious, but for me, the experience that I have, it's a bit more, it's just sinister, right? So we talk about like, okay, like unconscious bias training. And I don't know, for me, the way I interpret this is, okay, if it is very theoretical, it's very academic, and but for me, it's like real life, right? Like, it's like, okay, like, I have to have that conversation with myself, which is, okay, if I'm doing my work, I'm doing my job, and in sales, it's easy, right? And my team is performing, I'm hitting my numbers. It then becomes super confusing, which is like, if I'm like, all right, hey, like, normally any other salesperson, if they were in this position of being productive and their team is being, or they're performant, or their team is performant, if they're a leader, like, they would be celebrated, they'd be recognized, or their team would be celebrated, their team would be recognized, there'd be kudos all around, right? But it's like, well, why am I not having that experience? It's like, is it me? What's going on? And then it's like, I was just having a conversation with someone the other day, and they're like, like, she's like, the hardest part is when it seems personal, because there's really nothing you can do. So there is that piece of like, all right, hey, like, in the past, kind of getting back to like the resilience piece of like, oh, hey, I have to bounce back. So, it could be celebrated of like, oh, wow, like, you're so resilient, you know how to bounce back, you come back, you come back swinging, you have growth afterwards. And I go, yeah, but I'm exhausted, and you seem excited, but I was like, I'm so tired, and I don't want to be tired anymore, right? I was like, I at the end of the day, I really do care about being really really effective in my role. I really want to inspire people as a leader, right? Like, there was an experience that I had of getting into sales as an SDR, where I felt like I got to completely transform my life, because I'm like, I had access to a job where I could do really well, and I could be recognized for that, and I could make a lot of money doing it too, and I wasn't dependent upon other people. And that was important to me at that time, especially since I was like leaving, like, just left like an abusive marriage. So, or a marriage with an abusive person. So it's like, all right, I actually have the opportunity to stand on my own 2 feet and to really see myself as something more than I have in the past. And then it's like, however many years later, and I'm like, holy crap, did I find myself in like the exact same place that I was trying to get out of before I like got into this place, which is, all right, there is constantly this like, all right, and I can look around and I could see, all right, well, you have all these leaders, and it's different if the leaders, I could give the example of Ryan Longfield, it's different if you have somebody who wants to engage with you, who is receptive, who wants to brainstorm, who says, I want to help you in your career, and here's some ideas, but you tell me how, right? Like, how can I help you? There's that experience. I don't think that that's the majority of the experience for folks, though. Like, that really hasn't been my experience outside of the first company that I worked at and the company that I work at now.
Yeah, that's my current experience is finally the first time in tech, but I had that same experience when I was a retail manager at H.H. Gregg, if anybody remembers that old retailer. You probably do. In Chicago, didn't they have some H.H. Greggs up there?
Not that I know of.
Oh man, you missed out. You could haggle with the with sales associates, so that was always fun there.
Oh my God.
But like, that's one thing. When I went back to Kansas City for our wedding, people were like, when are you moving home? And that was like the one thing that kept coming into my mind was like, man, I have a really good leader who like doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the walk. He's like genuinely cares about everybody and has like this infectious energy that when he's not himself, it's like super noticeable. Like if he's tired or he's starting to like hit that wall. I do have an SDR question for Gabby. I have been getting inundated with people that they connect, and I'm the type of person, I pretty much accept everybody, which is a blessing and a curse. And they'll start like a real unassuming conversation. Like it's like, hey, Ashleigh, LinkedIn recommended that we know each other, but I don't think I know you. Would love to have you in my network. And then so it's like, cool. So, I just like, will thumbs up it or something. And then they'll comment on like, hey, saw a post, Ryan, about your dogs. They look awesome. What type of breed? Conversation goes a little further. And then they'll just ask like, what do you guys do at your company? And once it got to that part, it's like, so you got recommended to connect with me. You looked at posts about my dogs, but you didn't take the time to research a little bit about the company that I work for. Like,
It seems poorly executed. Because
very.
I like everything about that until that question.
Yeah.
And so my question back to him was like, are you genuinely curious or are you prospecting me? And they were like, a little bit of both. And I was like, and my response was a smiley face, and I can't do your homework for you, unfortunately. Like, and just in the future, like if you're really just genuinely wanting to have a connection with me, then don't have an alternate agenda where you're trying to sell something to me too. Like, I respect it more when it's like, you don't have to be like, hey, I want to sell you something right off the bat, but you're like, hey, I want to connect with you because I see what you do at your company and I think I might be able to help. Then that would have changed my whole mindset for the conversation, whereas like it felt sleazy, the whole personal stuff. That
It felt like a
wasn't-
bait and switch.
Exactly, definitely felt like a bait switch. And so I'm wondering, like, where is this training happening? Do you see this in your day to day? And then like, how do we, because I feel like they're taking like this whole personalization thing and they're just like messing it up terribly. Like, that's
I
not.
feel like that one was just poorly executed. So, okay, because I think there's the two main ways, or two, like, I'd say the spectrum, right? The two ends of the spectrum that I've seen is someone can, and because I'm also more likely to accept, and also like if an SDR, like for mine, I'm like, I don't say that I'm an SDR at heart. I have a great appreciation for sales development,
Mhm.
period, right? And so, and I'm also like posting a lot of content that would be beneficial potentially for sales development reps. I'm like, this is my world. So like if an SDR, someone who's in an SDR role, like connects with or wants to connect with me, pretty much 10 times out of 10, I'm going to accept the request, right? Like that's pretty much, and especially if we have like, actually the first thing I look at is, do we have mutual connections? So if we have like more than, let's say, like 15 mutual connections, like that to me is pretty much like an automatic yes.
Mhm.
So like what I've seen, so there's the one end of the spectrum, which is I'm like, all right, cool, accept, and then immediately it's a prospecting email, or it basically looks like an email over LinkedIn, and it's
Yeah.
totally prospecting, and like, and also with these folks, 99% of the time, if not more, it's totally irrelevant to my role and
Yep.
to the company. So like that to me, I was like, I actually, I'm like, I would rather coach people away from that. And so on the other end of the spectrum is kind of the path that you're talking about. And that is what we've seen. So we have reps, when they use that approach, they're way more effective at booking meetings. And so I think the challenge is, so, and this is not just over LinkedIn, like this can be over email, it's over any channel, is an SDR is so in a rush, not just any, a person in the SDR role, a person in the sales role might be so in a rush to get an outcome. And that outcome is, I want to book a meeting with you, right?
Yeah.
That they then don't take the time to actually build rapport with that person and to demonstrate sincere curiosity in them. Because here's the thing, if I'm a salesperson, I reach out to you, like if I connect with a salesperson, of course, hey, listen, we're salespeople. If we can provide value to each other, I don't see that as necessarily an ulterior motive, right? I'm just like, if we can be valuable, if there's mutual interest, mutual benefit, then great, right? But we have to do the work required in order to actually be able to define, like, is it going to be mutually beneficial for us? It's like, that to me is where people get messed up. So to go in and be like, all right, hey, like, let's connect. Yes, I 100% agree on that approach. If there's something that like stands out to you, or that stands out to them about your profile, and maybe there's like a personal connection, like, oh, hey, I also have a Great Dane. I grew up with them. And then, I mean, at Gong, we're salespeople selling to salespeople. So the path, well, not just sales, but salespeople selling to sales leaders, right? So if we have folks who are in the SDR position, they're just starting off in their career most of the time, and they can reach out to people and they can go like, hey, listen, I did some research on you, right? It seems as though you've been, you came up from being an SDR to being an AE to moving into a sales leader position to being a CRO, right? Like I see like you actually are genuinely curious about, how are you doing this? Like, I'm somebody who also wants to be able to have a very similar career path as you. And so the thing is, like with Gong, we're also like, it's coaching, it's development, it's learning. So it's all very much in line, right? Which is like, so like, hey, like, who have been some of the more effective coaches in your career, right? What have you learned from them? How are you bringing that back to your reps? And then you can start asking some insightful questions, such as, all right, how are you thinking about, or like, hey, have you ever thought about like how you can leverage the conversations that your reps are having, right, in a more scalable way to be able to distill like this knowledge that you've amassed over however many years, like in a much more scalable way.
Well, and it comes back to this idea of you become interesting by being interested.
Yeah.
The more you are interested in the other person, at some point, polite society manners are going to kick in and they're going to ask a question back.
Yep.
So I think that if I get like jumping in, like just distilling, because everything like that is our social clip to promote this episode right there. Miss Gabby, but like, seriously, it's a little bit because you're right. I think it's an execution thing. Like, first of all, please, this is a pet peeve of mine. I hate people say LinkedIn suggested we could, I don't give a shit what LinkedIn thinks.
That to me, like,
not a good enough reason. Like, I'd rather you just say, I'd like to connect.
Yeah,
that's fine. But then it comes back to, it's just, he went to trying to be interesting without being interested too quick.
Yeah.
It should have been a little bit more, tell me more about this, or how have you handled, how's your, it looks like you're growing, just asking more and more questions. And at some point you would have come back and said, hey, it's that pressure, Gabby. It's that same thing. We always like, hey, it's the end of month. It's end of this, instead of that. I've been talking to Ryan. Maybe I can get him to say yes, versus just letting things develop naturally through it's smart volume.
Yeah, there's this piece here, which is also, there's a rule of, if you can find the answer in a simple Google search, you should not be asking that question.
Yes.
And you very easily could have found out what we do.
Yeah. So, because
going to the web page.
I mean, it can be challenging, right? Because like, depending on the front of the SDR, like, okay, on their back end, like how many accounts might they be managing? How many, like, what are the KPIs and the metrics that they need to hit, right? So there could be something else that's there, such as, all right, I don't necessarily always have the time to research and blah, 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 like, well, I don't know, prep, right?
Or maybe I don't understand some of this stuff. Like, I spent most of my career selling into cybersecurity, and that stuff is nuanced and detailed. But that, again, you can use that to your advantage. I do a Google search, I try and figure it out, but then it's like, hey, I just want to make sure I understand this right. So you guys are doing this, and you're just confirming that you're understanding it right. Then people are always happy to help clarify things.
I think like there's like the coaching moment, right? So if there are people who are like in an SDR position, which is like, all right, hey, it's like there can be so many things that like you have to do during your day, and then there's always going to be your quota. And this is the coaching that I give to my reps. I go, listen, it is a longer play, but it's a much more beneficial one, right? So I'm like, because you're essentially, if you're just going in and you're just trying to cut straight to the point of like, all right, like, are you ready to take a meeting today? I'm like, 97% of the time, it's going to be no, right? So like, you have to build rapport. To Ashleigh's point, right? Like, you in order to be interesting, right, you have to be interested in them. It's that sincere and genuine curiosity. So like, it might not be that you know everything about their business or Ryan's business right now, right? But it could just be like, demonstrate that you've done a bit of research. Just because that goes a super long way, because that person it's okay, I don't expect for anybody to know the ins and outs of my business because you don't work there, right? And if you come in with some educated guess with a theory, either one, you're going to be right, or two, you're going to be wrong. And you also, but like, I think this is like Chris Voss thing, which is like, allow the person to correct you.
Yeah.
But a lot, and that's where you learn. And I also share with them, I'm like, and listen, the more they're engaging with you, the more of a bond that you have, and the more they're actually gonna recognize you. So it might be a no today, but if you're still gathering information about what is this person interested in, again, it's not your meeting this month, but it could be your pipeline next month and the month after. So if you're constantly building your pipeline out 2 or 3 months, like that's how you can go from, let's say, all right, I hit like 60% of my goal this month, I hit 100% of my goal the following month, and I hit 120%. So like that's where you start building repeatable success, because you're not trying to just rush for the meeting. You're actually trying to figure out what is going to be valuable enough for you to be inclined to take a meeting.
Yep.
Well, that's what building pipeline is. Like, it's not rushing pipeline or flooding the pipeline in that one instance. I mean, although we'd love to have, so much so much contacts or so many leads in our pipeline that it's just overflowing. But the reality is, like, that's not how it is for most SDRs or most businesses.
And it's not sustainable.
No.
That's the bigger thing, is it's never going to be sustainable, because pipeline is what keeps a company going. But the bigger thing is, like, and I've seen this by working at a lot of startups, some that have survived and some that have gone under. The ones that survive are the ones that build sustainable pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
And is it up and down? Oh, totally. It's insane. But it's not this, oh my gosh, we have to get this much money right now, everyone pull everything forward, and then the next quarter you've shot yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
And the SDRs get the brunt of that. The SDRs absolutely get the brunt of that. It's really easy if you don't have a strong leader to be like, okay, pull everything forward, pull everything forward, pull everything forward. But then you end up burning bridges or pulling things forward that are too early, and they're not going to enter a decision cycle. And now you've pushed yourself back, where maybe you could have gotten them in 60 days. Now you've killed it and it's dead for 6 months.
Ooh, Ashleigh, you said something really important.
It happens occasionally.
There's I think there's that piece there of, like, again, like a strong leader. I just read this book, I can't remember the exact names, but it was talking about the competencies of servant leadership. And there's this, and one of them was foresight. So you have to have the foresight to know. So, like, I was in a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and we had it's like our head of strategy. And she had brought this up specifically around, all right, hey, like, are reps just burning through all their pipeline? Are they just exhausting their pipeline? It's like, it's really hard to forecast. We were doing a forecasting session. Like, it's really hard to forecast if you're having your reps exhaust their pipeline month over month. And so, like, one of the things that, like, I'm sure much to, like, my manager's chagrin is, like, I was like, unless I think the way to counteract this is introduce accelerators. Like, if you really want people to, like, go above the expectations, incentivize them to do so. But if you don't have that in place, right? Like, I was like, hey, listen, like, if you want to hit 150% of your number, great. If you want to hit 120% of your number today, right? You have that buffer just in case some things don't work out. But, like, start padding next month, right? So that it's not a fire drill every single month.
And this is, like, I used to work, when I worked with my teams, I would always coach, like, you always want to have, especially if you're on a month-to-month number, it's harder to do with a quarter number, but with a month-to-month, I always tell them, like, the goal I would always tell my team is, look, you will perform better and more consistently, more resilience, more just better in general, long-term, sustained, not resilient, sustainable, if you can have 20 to 30% of your number on the books on day one of the month. So the last week of each month, it's like, look, like, it's funny. I saw this poll on LinkedIn yesterday. It's like, SDRs, which week of the month is the most stressful for you? For me, it was always the penultimate week. It was always week 3, because week 3 is where the month is made and lost. Week 4, there's not a ton you can do. Week 4 is all about setting up week 1 and thinking about it like that. So if you can come in with 20 to 30%, then you can grow, you can develop, you can adjust, and you've got that. And then that's that long-term sustainable pipeline. Versus, and that's the sort of thing, like, sometimes maybe if you're, and this is another thing that a lot of people don't realize, and I did this a ton, was if I was ever 1 or 2 appointments short, I would call the stuff that was on the books for next month and say, hey, any chance, my rep had a couple spots open up this week, any chance you guys want to meet this week? And all of a sudden, boom, that pipeline that I had to jumpstart next month, it's only 1 or 2, my quota is 20, it's not a huge deal. I can pull 1 forward, and now I'm consistent 100 and 100. or if I had had those extra ones the next month, that I would have been better on track towards 120. I'd rather hit 100 every month than be vastly between 120 and 80 every month.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, that's the piece, right? That's a
And
challenge.
it is hard. It is really hard. That is a hard thing to do, but
yeah,
you don't, but I feel like we're not, especially with, if you've got a monthly number. That's why every time I ran an SDR team, I really pushed for quarterly numbers, because if you have a monthly number, it's that short-sightedness. It makes it easier to think month. It's like, no. Like, it's quarterly, it's yearly. The business moves longer term. And if you have a monthly number, it's really hard to think beyond the first, to think beyond the 30th.
That's like when that like starts opening up a whole like philosophical, like how do we want to run our business, right? So I would imagine that more often than not, it's like you don't want to hear from leaders say, I'd rather have my reps just hit 100% than go for 120, right? And vacillate in that way. And so I do, again, like I've just been in a few conversations recently where like, even for myself, I'm like, yeah, there is that change that's going on there of, I'm like, all right, I'm like, at least right now, with my reps, it's like, hey, listen, like 100%, right? Like that's the minimum, right? Like that's the expectation. Great. And then there is this piece of like, get into these philosophical conversations with my reps now where it's like, hey, I could get 150%, right? And I just basically go, listen, if you're pacing, I'm like, all right, you're pacing at 130% of your number, right? Like if once we get to the point, like if they get to a point where the opportunities that they've already generated, right? They have their sales accepted opportunities that they get paid out on. Like it's like, all right, if they're at 80% of their number already with that, and then they have the future set, and these are like legitimately qualified, and then based off of the no-show rate, I was like, if they have that coverage that's there, and essentially like if all of them show they'll hit over, then I'm like, all right, hey, listen, I'd probably book like one more for this month. And then it's up to you to decide how do you want to manage your pipeline moving forward, right? But like, so it's like, I was like, hey, here's the buffer that I would give yourself just in case, because we never know. And after that, like, it's like, it's your choice of what you want to decide. Like, if you bring it in this month, great, you're going to get however much of your quota or however much of your variable this month. But like, if you put it into next month as well, like you'll have that pipeline set. So it is like thinking about that long term of, hey, listen, you might have to get 100% now to be able to work your way up to getting to 150% consistently across the board. But nonetheless, we want it consistent.
Yep. And that's you mentioned something there that's really important that I don't think is talked about enough.
Yeah.
Pacing.
Yeah.
The number of people, the number of times, like that's one of the first things I ended up now that I'm in the consulting world and I'm going into different companies, nobody does pacing for SDRs, which drives me up the wall. It's like, no, you got to have a calculator that shows the team like, hey, based off of if we zoom, and I always tell people to goal off a 30% no-show rate, because like, hopefully it's less than that, but I'd rather plan for the worst, hope for the best. Cause then it's like, hey.
Oh yeah. I go in there and I'm like, oh, I'm going to be conservative. I was like, I'm conservative because so I'm like, hey, absolute best case scenario, everything hits. That's never happened. So,
touch wood, but no, exactly. It's exactly that. But it's that conversation around pacing. It's like, hey, you've got 10 on the book. You've got 10 that have happened. You've got 10 on the books. I know statistically 7 of those are probably going to show. So right now you're tracking at 17. I know you've got 20 on the books. Your goal is 20, but you're technically short. So we got to go find a way to get you 2 or 3 more. So how can we do that?
Yeah.
And and at the same time, the other variable I started adding onto that is percentage of the month left.
Yep.
So if 10% of the month is elapsed and you are at 10% of your goal, you're a little behind, but not a ton. If you're at 70% of the goal with 50% of the month elapsed, perfect.
Yeah.
But if you're at 70% of goal with 70% of the month elapsed, you're screwed.
Yeah.
So it's these conversations about pacing, and nobody does this around like where you should be. And I know it's hard to do when you're dealing with closers, because closing always ski slopes at the end of the quarter.
Yeah.
It just, that's the way it is, but you can plan for that accordingly you can build that into your pacing. So it's like, hey, if you can get to 50% by 70%, then you're doing great. But nobody's doing this with SDRs again, because there's this, it's this perception that it's, I think in a lot of companies, it's this perception that it's lower value. That's
Yeah.
higher volume, it's lower value, without realizing that just putting that little bit of extra time there means the pipeline gets more consistent. You get that performance. And it's really interesting because there's actually a study done, and I cannot find it. So if anyone who's out there listening knows where this was, because I know I saw it, I read it, it was legit, but there was a study done by, I think it was Harvard Business, actually. They looked at the performance of male and female sales professionals, and they were focused on fin sales. So this is Wall Street, but they found that women on average had higher performance on average, but that men would have higher peaks. So, and women were also more accurate with their forecasting. So it's an interesting thing too, whereas we're not teaching these skills, I think, early enough to get people thinking and in control to come back in later. But it's interesting to think about that, like, hey, and this is something you look at with your sales leaders when you're interviewing for roles and stuff. Is this a company that wants, a consistent average attainment, which is better for health, which is better for generally everything? Or is this something that's like, I don't care, you run this every month and the comp plan is designed as such? It's like, I get nervous, like I'm with you. Accelerators are fantastic, but I hate accelerators that are designed to make you drain the pipeline every month. That's not sustainable. It's like, you can't have accelerators that are incentivized where it's like, hey, I will make more money if I hit 150 this month and 50 next month than if I just hit 120 both months.
Yeah. And I agree 100%. And so one thing I'm blessed to have, like, the support from my leadership is, I felt like as an SDR, a lot of my coaching was like, if I didn't hit for a month, there was never like, all right, let's listen to some calls. Let's think about objection handling. It was all like, well, you only had X amount of activity, and looking at the numbers, and it's like, looking at the numbers, I'm over the activity that you guys said would get an opportunity. But looking at historically my numbers, I would need like 1,000 more activities to get to where, based on what you guys are telling me. And so then once I started like taking my own destiny into my own hands and started like, okay, it's not just about pumping more activity out. Like, they're wrong. And I need to be, I know that they're wrong. I just need to find the data and I need to like prove it out.
Yeah.
And then, so
own your numbers. Do not let your leadership tell your numbers. You own your numbers. It's not
so
that hard.
I've given my team that exact like freedom by, there's no activity threshold if you're working for me as an SDR. What I'm interested in is how many connections you can get. And so a connection is actually somebody picking up the phone. They may tell you to piss off. They may say, I'm busy, but you actually broke through and you connected with them. Then if you get, let's say 10 connections, I know if we play the numbers, like 5 of those will be they'll let you shoot your shot. And what I call that is a qualifying. And you walk away with some sort of tangible piece of information that we can put in the Salesforce that helps us forecast better. And then the holy grail for them is to get them to accept a meeting. And there's no like qualified op. It's just they book the meeting, the guy shows up, you get paid, you hit your metric that you're judged on. And so I feel like taking out that like having SDRs wake up and think, I have to do 100 activities or 50 activities, and more like, all right, man, like, I don't care how many activities you do. If it takes you 10 and you get 10 connections and 5 of those are qualifying conversations and you book 2 meetings from it, then like do it again, rinse and repeat. But
I have a really strong love-hate reaction to that, because I love the trust you're putting in your team. I love you're giving them the flexibility to hit it in a way that makes sense for them. I hate it from a business perspective because it can get really hard to figure out trends, what's working and what's not at a macro team level, which makes it harder to scale. What I found worked really well for me, and I'm not telling you what to do, but this is what worked for me, was I always did have a threshold, a minimum. But what I told them basically was like, look, if you're above this number, you're not really going to get me on you about activity. But the moment your performance starts to dip, this is the first thing I'm going to. So if you're not on pace, you better be at this dial minimum. You better be at this email minimum, period. Or it is the first thing that's going to get discussed. 2, I also described that minimum as like, look, this is your salary. This is how I can go and justify your existence. Not that I need to, but this is how I justify your existence to finance.
Mm-hmm.
This is the ammo I need to keep everybody else off our back so we can do our jobs in the best way possible. This is my air cover. So I need you to hit these minimums because that way the company has a certain amount of guarantee that they're getting what they need out of you from a fiscal perspective.
Yeah.
Then we've got the flexibility to go do whatever we need to do, whatever way we need to do it. But I make sure that that number is something also that is, look,
realistic.
Realistic is, and I developed this in conjunction with finance, with marketing, with all the other things. This number is built. If you are hitting this minimum, you should not be getting below 90% of your number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
And
the
if you are, then it's great because then now I've got the data. Because that's the other thing. A lot of people set these activity minimums like 30 calls a day. And it's like, I can't get good data there around what's working and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's really hard. Even if you've got an amazing tool like Gong, it's really hard to get the statistically significant data around where's the problem. Is it your pitch? Is it your objection handling? Is it your opener? Is it your listening skills? Are you not employing silence enough? There are so many things that can go wrong. I need volume to help get that data pool to figure out where you need to grow.
I've got some thoughts. So with my team, like there are like, here's the way I think about this. There's like different kinds of performers, right? Different kinds of top performers specifically. So there are the ones who are high activity, right? So it's like, it's high output, high activity, high output, and they're going to get 100, 120% of their number, right? Like just from sheer effort, sheer will alone. Then
They will not have the highest conversion rates when it comes to conversation to thing.
Yes. So exactly. Right. Then you're going to have people who are low activity, highly effective. These are typically more senior folks, right? Like to me, these are people where it's like, they were like an AE at another company, something happens, they want to break into tech, right? So like they're highly skilled, very senior, kind of hard to manage, I'll be very honest, right? So because like I can't get trends, I can't learn from them is basically what that's that person, but I can count on them to deliver, right? So like from a numerical perspective, I can't really dig into their work and find out those trends, replicate that and give it to other folks who might be struggling, right? So like this, but like at least
I can tell you how to do that. I've got tips for that. We'll talk those offline, but
right,
I have
cool.
ideas on that.
The only time, what I have thus far is just shadowing them because it's like, they're like, I just figured it out. So I'm like, all right, cool. So I have to not I have to, but I'll invest those because I have one person on my team, highly effective. Again, like her accounts work to opportunities generated or meetings booked is like off the chain. So she just knows how to spot an op. The biggest challenge with this person is like, all right, I've got a book of like 1,100 accounts. Like, how do I just sift through my book? So I'm like, all right, again, highly effective. There's some like initial things that like some fundamental things that we got to work on, but like I was like, just walk me through exactly how you find your accounts. They walk me through this hour-long process, right? Because like they're so detailed, so well researched, right? Like they get into the nitty-gritty. It takes a lot of time, and that's why we're not seeing a high amount of activity. So it's like, walk me through your process, and then I can go and build a dashboard where you don't have to go and like do all this other stuff, right? So that's like the one thing of, hold on, please. You hear her in the background, but yeah, so I'm like, yeah. So like with that person, it's like, okay, cool. Like walk me through your process. Can we replicate the process? Then for the people who are high activity, right? Like, but low conversion for them, for them, it's like, it's a lot about the coaching. It's a lot about not just, all right, hey, like, did you get a connect? And did you get a meeting, right? It was a quality connect and a meeting. It's more like, all right, what are the call dispositions? What are the outliers? What's happening? So like there's another team in the segment that I work on, that I work in, and there's one rep, there's this one rep who is super high activity, like she's 100% a top performer, high flyer, but like the amount of work she has to do in the output, it doesn't always align. And when I go in and it's like, all right, hey, this person, like, let's say if they got like 66% of the connects that they got were to the wrong people, right? So it's like, it can't just be activity for activity's sake. So for one person, it's a really solid process that's super specific, very targeted, just really slow, very inefficient, right? So for them, I'm looking for different ways of just like making the process faster, right? Much more efficient because they're already effective. And then for the people who are very efficient, not so effective, it's like, what's going on here? Is it the list? Is it the accounts? Great. I've got this top performer who's super effective. Replicate what she's doing. Next. Okay, like let's get into the conversations now. Are we calling the right people? If it's a no, that's it's like, all right, hey, like then I could pull a report and then I can show maybe someone, again, the top performer, who are the people that she's working. Great. So I said I can't really learn from her. I lied, obviously. So there's that one piece of it. And then also like, this is like within like a solution like Gong, for example, I can go in to an extent, the data is helpful. I think the data side, the analytics side is super, super powerful for sales reps, AEs. On the SDR side, it's a little bit more nuanced, right? Where I do have to, like right now, I do have to go into like every single call and go, what's really going on here? Because it's not always just about patience, because sometimes like I've seen reps where the more they interrupt, the more successful they are because they're calling in cold. So, but like for some reps, I'm like, are you just going on a tangent? Are you actually saying things that matter to people? Right. And then that's where we can go back in our one-on-ones and start to identify one specific area in the call, just one, not the whole thing. And then it's like, let's talk through why you got the result. Like you didn't get the meeting. Let's go back to this one area specifically that would have had the biggest impact on it. And now we're going to role play just this 30 seconds, not the whole 6-minute call, just these 30 seconds right here, over and over and over again until it becomes automatic, right?
Yep.
Then that's how I can start to help them, like, because they're going to do high activities, period. But I want these to be quality activities, right? And then when they get the connects, right, they can have a conversation, but I want them to be better at driving towards a mutually beneficial end. So that could mean qualify them out sooner, right? Or, hey, listen, you're not going to get the meeting today, but you're going to get that meeting in 2 weeks. So like, let's also create a system for organizing your follow-ups as well. So again, you're going to do high activity, just focus it on the things that are going to have the biggest impact. I think there's this one piece of like, something is super important because I can see, potentially I could see someone go, oh, hey, like I hit my number, the end of whatever, like I'm gonna hit my number. I see this with like more senior reps. Is there like, they kind of, what's the word that I want to say? They kind of, mail it in. Is that the
phone it in, mail it
phone
in.
it in. There we go. Yeah. So like, yeah, it's like I had there was one rep I was managing and like they were going to hit their number every month, right? Like they're like, don't worry about it. But what I would see is that they were really inconsistent. When they did high activities, that's when they got the most results. But they would like wait 2 weeks. They go, I got it. And I'm like, all right, you're constantly stressing yourself out at the end of the month, right? You're tearing your hair out and then you're saying how you need PTO and whatever else it is. But like, and I actually brought up, like, I brought the graph. I was like, you are so, I'm like,
yes.
on the input side, I saw like from like for the past 8 months, I was like, this is a trend for you, right? Like, so this
you're
is
creating this cycle.
Yeah. I was like, yeah. So I'm like, it is 100% fully in your control. So, it might not be that you create time out. I'm not saying don't create minimums. And it's like, hey, like recognize the patterns of that person, right? And then maybe it's a matter of, all right, hey, for this person, they do need to have minimums, right?
Yeah.
With that person, it wasn't a matter of, hey, we're talking about just you're not getting results because you're not having activities. I'm like, no, I'm talking about a behavior right now that if you don't get this tightened up in the SDR role, you're going to get rocked in this next move that you're about to make. So those are the conversations. A lot of times what I'm having with more senior reps is, hey, implement the behaviors now. Like think about it, it's like preseason, you're conditioning, you're getting into shape right before the season so that the season is easier, right? So do the hard work now, like in this SDR role in your 3, 4, 5 months before you're up for promotion, like get your habits, get your behaviors really, really solid so that it's a super easy not say it's not going to be easy, but it's an easier transition into the new role. So you're not having to learn a new role, like potentially new technology, new processes, new everything, plus having to implement new habits as well.
Yep. It's fascinating, this mix of how kind of that growth can happen and when it's incentivized and when it's not, and the impact it has down the line. Like, and I tell people that sort of thing all the time. It's like, look, you want to set the organization, the self-awareness, the self-development stuff. You want to be doing that before you're in a new role, because there's going to be growth that happens with that anyway. If you're having to completely redo how you stay organized, which is I think one of the number one skills you learn as an SDR is how to organize and manage your time.
Yeah.
If you don't learn those skills and practice those over months, because those are things that take a lot of time to get good at and to realize what's working, what's not. And it's a constant evolution. If you're not already in that habit, by the time you move into whatever that next role is, whether it's leadership, AE, whatever else, I honest to God believe that is one of the biggest reasons why AEs have such a high burnout rate. Why that SDR AE transition gets screwed up so much is because the SDRs are not properly set up with those baseline skills incentivized over months. Like I get super nervous, I'll be honest, when I see SDRs promoted at 8 to 12 months. Like that is fast. That person has not had a chance. That person has not been fully ramped for more than 4 or 5 months. So they have not had a chance to build those systems and to identify what those patterns are for them. Like I think, Ryan, when I was an SDR, I called myself an activity queen. I was consistently top 1 or 2 on the leaderboard, but it fit for my region because my region was New York. They were short conversations. They were quick. It was, are you interested? Yes, no, great. Talk to you next month. Super quick. But that's what worked for my region. So it was a great match of my personality and my sale. Then we went back to, for a while I had to cover someone who was out on maternity leave and I was calling the Deep South. Oh Lord, that kicked my ass. Completely different thing. And that taught me the importance of mirroring personalities and stuff like that. I still suck at longer conversations and stuff like that. I'm much better around when it comes to cold calling, hyper direct, which is why I get along very well with the Dutch, who are known for being like, a lot of other countries think they're rude. I'm like, no, they're just direct. I love this. This is great. I know exactly where I am.
When I lived in France, people were like, oh, the French are such a-holes. I was like, no, they're just going to be very frank with you. That's it.
Yeah. Your shirt makes you look fat.
Yes.
It's not, I'm mad at you for being fat or I think you're ugly. It's that shirt doesn't look good on you.
It's not beautiful.
Don't wear it again.
Yes.
Find a different one. You deserve better.
Yes.
Yeah. I love this. This is how I was raised, but it's an interesting thing. And I want to bring up another thing. Shout out to Scott Slover, who was my manager when I was an SDR, my last period as an SDR at FireEye. I was covering, I've told a lot of people this story and I realized I forgot about this. I covered New York during Hurricane Sandy, which was the best preparation for coaching people through COVID I could have imagined. Although at the time I wanted to murder everyone because my patch just shut down. And it's like, hi, I'm not going to call someone and be like, hi, your house is underwater. Can we talk about network security?
Oh God.
It's not going to fly. Not happening. Scott was smart. He gave me a max because I was an activity queen. So I was like, fine, I'm just going to crush. I'm just going to call more. I'm going to call more. He's like, no. No more than 80. Stop. Because I was doing 120, 150 dials a day. We didn't have a dialer. It was all hardcore manual back in the day.
Wow.
He's like, you need to stop at 80 because you will die because you're just driving yourself crazy.
Yeah.
So it forced me back into this like very strategic, and we did a lot of other stuff to kind of keep me alive during that time. But it's interesting because I also tell people like, I think I hit 60% of my quota that quarter, but I defy anyone to get more than 60. Like you look at my performance, that is the quarter as an SDR I am the most proud of.
That's awesome.
But it was 60%, but it's like, if you compare that quarter to quarters where I hit 120, I'm still more proud of that 60 because I had to overcome everything to get to that 60.
I'm gonna, Ashleigh, you just dropping gems, like so much perspective, because I was having a conversation with, I think I was either talking to her or texting with her, Nikki Ivy, and
oh God, I love Nikki. Nikki is the truth giver, and God bless her.
I call her Shaniqua because
I know.
I want to normalize her full name because she's the homie.
Oh, her name. Yeah, I know. She's gorgeous.
I'm not.
No, I think she introduced me as Nick, or introduced. Yeah, we got introduced as Nikki, but yeah, Shaniqua, right? So it's like, here's what I remember. We were having a conversation, and she was like, and I think at the time she was like, she's a team lead for an SDR role or for an SDR team. And it must have been earlier this year because like I was also my team was struggling. We had gone through a lot of different changes, and so we come to find out that there were some serious like structural challenges, process challenges that were totally out of anybody's control, and it was impeding performance. And so like I just remember Nikki going, oh, I can't, like, I'm not, like, my team's is not at 100%, like, and I feel like I can't talk about it, right? And I was like, screw that, like, my team's at 67%, and I'm gonna write a post about it tomorrow, like, so, like,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that there's this whole thing of like, all right, we're gonna glorify the good times, but we don't talk about like the fact that during the hardest of times is likely when we have to learn the most, and that's when we have to like change. We have to have variety, otherwise we become irrelevant. So I'm like, this year especially, because we had a period of like 3 months where it was like sub 60 performance, right? Again, we had these serious challenges that we had no control over, and I'm like, that is where I had to figure out, okay, I can't be like, I can't be the I can't whip the whatever, crack the whip about activities. I have to get smarter about how I coach my people, so I got to be smarter about coaching. So it's like, that's what like drove me to go, all right, like, I need to get better at my job. I need to get better as a leader. Otherwise, like, none of this is ever going to work out whatsoever. So this piece that you're sharing of, yes, that was 60%, but like, that was the period that you're most proud of. It's like, even for me right now, I'm like, oh no, like my team, like, at the beginning of the year, yeah, it was a struggle. That was the time that I was like, no, like, this is really, really where I learned the majority of my leadership lessons, like the majority of my coaching lessons, the majority of my management lessons. Like,
That's
if
huge.
I did not have this period, like, my team would not have hit 120% last month. Like, I'm sure of it.
Oh no, spot on. I asked this in interviews. If you ever interview with me, this is a spoiler. I will ask you this question. It's my favorite question to ask. Tell me about the last time you screwed up.
Ooh, yesterday.
Yeah, no, but it's exactly that. I want someone I want to hear about the time when you screwed up, when you went through the hard shit, because I don't have time, especially in business and especially with SDRs. I do not have time to take you through your first life crisis.
Yep.
I can help you with a lot. I can get through a lot, but if this is the first time you're really going to lay it all on the line, you're a risk. I don't care if you went to Harvard, you're a risk.
Yeah.
I want somebody who's gone through who knows what it's like to have your back up against the wall and can push through and figure it out and is stronger as a result. It's not to say that you can't, whatever, but you have to have gone through the stuff. And so that's where it drives me nuts. And I've been on a bender on this on social media a bit this year, where it's like, oh, well, I don't want to hire them because they had, they achieved, they weren't 120%. And I was talking to my husband about this a week or so ago. The handicapping in sales is wrong. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is how often we've got performers, we've got managers, we've got whatever. And I've been judged because there was a point where I went through 4 layoffs in 3 years. That does not mean I am bad at my job. It means I sucked at picking companies during that period. You want to handicap me for something? Judge me for that. Do not judge me for my sales skills. At the same time, you want to look at performance. It's like, okay, so let's just brutal honesty. We're going to put all this up on a call. If the 3 of us are up for a job and we all have the exact same performance history for the past 6 months, Gabby gets the job. Gabby is a woman of color. She has had the hardest hill to climb statistically, period. If it's Ryan and I, it's going to be Ryan. If it's me and a white guy, it's probably going to be me, if all things are equal. And that's not how the world works, but we're not thinking about this stuff. We're not talking about this stuff. And so you've got people who are coming in, and you've got somebody who's at a startup whose average attainment was maybe 70, 80%. And you've got someone who was at Oracle or at a major company and their performance was consistently at 90% or something like that. And you're like, oh, well, I want the person who performed at 90. They've never been at a startup. They're going to have no clue what it's like to build a system from scratch.
Mm-hmm. This is something that Kevin Dorsey shared with me, where he's, so there was a book that he recommended I read, and I have it next to me all the time, which is Never Hire a Bad Salesperson Again. Sorry, it's blurred out. But it's by Christopher Kroner and Richard Abraham. And there's these, like, so they're saying like there's like 3 main characteristics, right, of a really good sales hire. And I think it's 3, it's either 3 or 4, but there's the need for achievement, right? And you want to see a track record of high achievement. And it doesn't, so like that's number 1.
And high achievement can be defined differently. So high achievement in some cases means 60%. You have to look at the context.
Yep, definitely.
I'm taking notes, by the way.
I'm okay. So there's the competitiveness as well, which is a second piece of this. So, like I remember being at this one company and I was, and we were getting ready to hire, and I was talking to a recruiter, like someone who did, he sourced talent, or placed talent specifically for SDRs. And I was just asking like, hey, like, what are the typical backgrounds that you are looking for? The profiles that you're looking for. And he had mentioned like anybody who was like in sports, for example, people who worked in hospitality, specifically like restaurants, right? So thinking about like, thinking about specifically like servers and waitresses and things like that. But he's like, and so I remember like presenting this information to the person who was helping me with hiring on the HR side. And she's like, oh, are we just trying to hire all the popular people? And I was like, get out of here, number one. But I'm like, there's this like discipline, this commitment. There's like you spur each other on so that you get better. Like if you want to get better at playing a sport, you play against people who are better at that sport.
Bingo.
Like you sit around and do nothing, right? So it's like people will like, because I've seen people come through. And because you're talking about like, I don't want to have to it's like manage you or coach you through or guide you through your first life crisis while we also have these super high expectations for you. I also see people coming through, and especially folks who are working to break into tech, and then they're not competitive. They're like, oh, someone's better than me. Wham. Right? Like they internalize that, or even worse, they start looking at the other person and going, what's wrong with them? Right? Like, oh, they work like they are workaholic. I don't want to be like them. I'm like, you don't want to compete is what you're telling me right now. Right? So there's that thrill, like they take pleasure in the opportunity to compete. And it's not competition in such a way of, hey,
it's competitive, but not cutthroat.
Exactly. Like I don't have to be better. Like I don't have to step on your throat to be better. Right?
Yep.
Yes, exactly. It's, hey, listen, you've got something. You're at a place that I want to be at. And so again, if I want to be better, I need to learn from you. Right.
Yeah,
and the only way I learn from you is to like I'm gonna like let's go. Right. Like I'm gonna do role plays.
I used to always joke with people. It's like, look, I want to hire a team where the top performer each month gets taken out for beers or whatever by the rest of the team. And they're like, hey, good job. Tell us how you did it.
Yes. And
then the next month it's like, okay. And then as you're leaving, someone on the team's like, hey, I hope you enjoyed that because next month you're buying it from me.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the attitude.
Exactly. I remember
it's enjoy it. We're going to learn, but at the same time, and it's this, but this is the thing. And I feel like this ties back to DEI, microaggressions and stuff like this, because you hit a nerve for me when you look at workaholics and stuff like that. I was 5-6 years into my sales career before I saw a woman with a family.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the first 5 years of my career, I internalized, I cannot have a career and a family.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's for sure what I want, but that's really screwed up that that's what I internalized because I just didn't see it. Right. And so I looked at, and I had a really crazy experience in 2020 because I went on my fourth layoff. I started my own business, and then I kind of persisted that it was a business. And I was like, no, I am. And it's been this whole thing where kind of defining, I somehow became all the things I said I would never be. I saw the VPs of sales that traveled all the time and did all of these things. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be a VP of sales. I want to have a life. I don't want to be a workaholic, but I want to be passionate about what I do. So looking at people who's like, oh, if the only way to get ahead is to be someone that I don't want to be, I don't want to play the game. It's not that I don't want to compete. It's that the only way I see to win is to be something I don't want to be. And what I figured out is that's a signal to me that I'm in either the wrong type of sale, or I need to change the rules.
Yeah, that's an interesting piece. And like, I actually, I don't interpret like that specifically as the competition. Like, here's how about this. We talked about there's different kinds of performers. There's different kinds of players as well. So like, I grew up playing basketball, volleyball. And so like basketball, you're going to have 5 players, right, per team on the court at any one given time. On volleyball, you're going to have 6 players on the court at any one given time. And we all have our different roles. We all have our different specialties as well. Mm-hmm. So here's my thing is like, because my first time managing a team, I had someone on my team who had a 6-year-old daughter, right? So it's like, but another piece of this is I'm raised by a single mom who was an executive as well, right? Like worked her way into being an executive. So for me, I'm like,
shout her out.
Yeah, shout out to
she gave us you.
Amazing. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. So like So I think there is this piece, there's that awareness of, I know what it's like to have a mom who's never around, like who was not really around, couldn't be fully there, because she also was somebody who really cared about her career. Of course, like I benefited big time from that. So I always think about like, hey, listen, like how to put this, like, what is this person's aspiration, right? Like as a person, not just as a professional, what do they want to do? So like with this person, the one that I had managed, like I remember she had reached out to me. So basically, like, she came in as an SDR. She was really, really solid. She wasn't like the top performer, but she was the most consistent, the most targeted, definitely the most seasoned. And so it's like, and I just remember like her talking about like having had this car since she was like 19 years old, and she was like 31 at the time. And she's got the 6-7-year-old daughter. Her fiance is the breadwinner at home, right? And so so she's just talking about like, she would kind of share with me like things that she wanted to do. And I was like, you have the opportunity to do that here, and I want to be fully supportive, right? And it's not to say like you have the opportunity to do something really special at this company we work at, but it's like there's a path that you can explore that'll allow you the means, right? Where you'll be able to touch a certain point where you can then do whatever you want with your daughter and your car and whatever else it is. So maybe it's like 6-7 months later, she had also gotten promoted. I remember her sending me a message and being like, yo, GB, like I was able to put my kid in immersion school. Like I was able to get a new car. I'm now like the primary breadwinner at home. Like this has been transformative. So like my role is not like, so with someone like that, like, does that mean this person is going to have to bounce at 4:30? Yes. Right. But is this person going to get their job done? 100%.
Hire more parents.
So
My
this is
top
bullshit.
performer
We're not doing this.
is a mother of 3,
Mm-hmm.
and she kills it. And she actually, they've been messaging me on our internal chat during this call, and she's a huge fan of your content, Gabby. And she said she wanted me to, she said, tell Gabby I said hey, and hope she found something to feed the birds with. Were you trying to feed birds yesterday? Or
ha ha ha. She was in a room yesterday. I was in a clubhouse room.
Nice. Stephanie Clemens is her name.
Yeah.
So
Okay. I connected with her. Wait, did y'all work together in the past?
Yep.
Yeah,
We used to work
I know
together. I poached her away from
that
company.
Nice.
So.
No, I remember I met her in a clubhouse room, and then because you were telling me about what was happening, some things that were happening, and then she was in this clubhouse room, and I was just like, "Are you at this company?" She's like, "Yeah," and I was like, "I know what's happening." So yeah. But no, that's what's up. But here's the thing is like, people have like, whether you have kids, right, or not, like whether you're a parent, right? I mean, Ashleigh, not to, you talked about living with someone who, right, like
I have commitments, whether it's not kids, but I have commitments.
Yeah, you have commitment. Yeah, so it's like people have commitments, right? Like there's things that pull them away, whatever else that is. Like this year has been wild. It's been a wild year, like for literally everyone. So like there was violence against the Asian community, right? Like, and people were highly impacted by that. There's always something going on. And so I think if we don't actually take that into consideration, that's number one. I think it's more than anything else. I think it's a huge missed opportunity. More than anything, like I think that's an opportunity to actually connect deeply with someone, for someone to go,
yes,
I feel seen, I feel acknowledged, and like, you know what, yeah, I'm having a really, really hard time and I haven't talked about it, and I feel like I can't show up fully because it's always on my mind, and I'm just so thankful that like it's not me, right? Like you hear me, you understand me, and I don't feel alone anymore. And people like they take that to heart, and then they show up and they go, listen, like, I'm glad that I had my space, right? And like, and now I feel like I actually can work better. I can be more engaged with my work. Or I go, hey, listen, it seems like right now is a really hard time. We have benefits such as leave, right? Like, go take care of what you need to go take care of. Take care of yourself, because you're not taking care of yourself first. How are you going to be able to take care of this work? Right. Mm-hmm. So like, you always come first, I think, is the message. But I think what's up happening is people go, oh, you didn't hit 40 calls, you didn't hit the activity minimums today, like you're not you're not willing, you're not committed, right? You're this and that, rather than asking, hey, like I noticed, especially if this is like out of nowhere. Hey, I noticed that like I just noticed like a dip, right? Like in terms of like activity a little bit. And I'm just really curious, like, how are you doing? You know, like it's like I just noticed one little thing that kind of stands out. Like, how's your day going? What's going on? You know?
And I think it's important. I think you hit something really important there, because one, this is not something that managers alone check in on each other, check in on your friends, but it's something as simple as, I think a lot of people underestimate the power of just, how you doing? I noticed this. I care about you.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure everything's okay. If I can help with anything. If
feel free
nope,
to tell me to mind my
everything's fine.
business.
Everything's fine. I just got a little distracted today. I'm a little tired. Great, no worries.
Yeah.
Cool. But if you normalize doing that when things are fine, then when somebody really needs help, whether it's a peer, a boss, or a subordinate, it's a lot easier for them to stand up and say, nah, shit hit the fan. I need help.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that happens. Like that legitimately happened where again, because I had a rep on my team where it was like they were just short of hitting their number, right? It's like, hey, like if you just, you know, like here's the path towards getting it, like how do you feel about it? It's like, okay, cool. And they're not hitting it, right? They're not getting to that one place that they need to get, like that they can control. And it's like, hey, like you know, just like, hey, listen, rather than going, what the fuck are you doing, right? It's like, hey, like what might I not know, right? Like what's going on, whatever, right? And this person then reaches out to me. So like we had established that piece. Like I try to work on that. And so when the time came for this person to go, like, hey, listen, GB, you know, I was really nervous about sharing this with you, but you know, there's something going on with somebody I really care about in my family, and I have to be there, right? And I go, no, like I really appreciate you sharing this with me. And like, how can I best support you in this moment?
Bingo.
Right? Like, so I'll tell people, I'm like, listen, if you can't engage, like it's not a matter of can't, but like, hey, listen, if I want you to be fully engaged in the work. And I also recognize there's life too, right? Where we can't be fully engaged and we have benefits for this moment specifically. So like, I'd rather you not have to stress about work and what's going on outside of work. I'd rather you be able just to focus in on one thing. What is that one thing that you really want to focus in on right now?
That's huge. That's huge.
It really is. All right. And on that note, we've got to wrap it up and move into the final phase of our episode, which is the lightning round.
Woo-hoo!
So we're going to ask you a series of rapid fire questions. Don't think too much about any of these. We end every show the same way. It's a lot of fun.
Okay.
Gabby, what's your morning routine?
Ooh, I wake up when my dog wakes me up, normally around 5:30, 5:45, brush my teeth, we'll drive out to the pond, walk around a few times, grab a coffee, then get ready for the day. Yeah. Shower, drink my coffee, listen to some calls, the end.
I like it. I like it. I know that your grandfather, your first boss in sales development, and most recently your CFO or CRO at Gong are very influential people to your sales career. But if you had to pick one, who has made a significant impact on your career? Or maybe the most out of those three, most significant?
Oh, it's so hard because there's like different times where the impact, right? I'm gonna give a shout out to my CRO, Ryan Longfield. It's not just a brown nose but and here's why. So I've mentioned, right, I lead the Gong Circle. So it's the resource group, the employee resource group for Black employees at Gong. He's our executive sponsor. And we had a one-on-one the other day, and it was just amazing to see somebody who wanted to truly be invested, truly be involved, and allow me to take the lead on certain things, but also be open to like brainstorming and providing guidance. Like he was literally like the best coach in that moment. And so for me, I've come from environments in the past where like I did feel very much by myself and kind of on an island, right, talking about these kinds of things. And there wasn't a really big just leadership wasn't very receptive. So I think for me, like where I'm at in my career and like really wanting to grow in sales, tech sales, specifically in leadership, to have someone demonstrate certain things that for me is just such a strong signal that, wow, there are probably a lot more people out there like him who want to be involved, who want to mentor, sponsor, and advocate for the things that I really care about. And he sees that as a valuable part of the role that I play within the company that I play as well. So for me, that was just something that I hadn't really experienced in the past. So like that to me is why I'd say he's been very impactful. It's been more recent, but it's a really big impact given some of the experiences I've had in the past.
I'm gonna have to follow him on LinkedIn now.
Yeah.
I gotta get connected with this guy.
Yeah, he's good.
All right. That is something a little more lighthearted. What's your pump up song?
Ooh, Levitating by Dua Lipa and DaBaby.
Nice.
Coming soon to the Other Side of Sales playlist on Spotify.
Yes.
What's one thing you wish you'd learned earlier?
So I just made a post on this yesterday. I told this to one of my reps. I swear, so deal with it. But I go, listen, it's okay to have shit. It's not okay to lay around in it. Yeah. So I wish I had learned that lesson sooner, which is like, listen, you don't have to get hard. You don't have to be hard on yourself because you've gone through some shit, right? But you can't just stay there. You got to keep moving forward. So like, I wish that just whatever it was, bad month, bad quarter, been let go from 2 companies in 1 year after being a top performer there, right? Like rather than internalize it, keep it moving.
I did like that post. That was a good post. It's good stuff.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, this is me. I totally spaced out. That was right. Okay. Like,
maybe there's a pause for Michael. I don't know.
Hi, Michael. All right. What's one book that's had a big impact on your sales career?
Ooh, one book. I'm gonna go with it's not a sales book. The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. So it's not just here's my thing. Like I feel like I learned a lot more about how to get better within my profession of sales just from life experiences.
Yes.
Like, and vice versa, right? Like I learned certain things in sales and then I'm like, or let's say in like at work, and I'm like, oh, like now I know how to better approach the situation over here with whatever else it is. And I always forget like what like each one of these agreements is, but like there's one big message, which is always do your best. Actually, now I remember, like always do your best. Don't make assumptions. Don't take it personally. And it's like mean what you say. I'm paraphrasing on that one, right? Like be intentional with your words. And so like from a leadership perspective, right? Like if I demonstrate all 4 of those, like that's an amazing model for the people who are hopefully following me, right? So like that's one big piece of things, but also I think it can be really easy to like take things personally wherever we go, but especially at work, and especially if it's tied to how I take care of myself, right, financially and everything else. So there's times where I find myself kind of like doing like a downward circle, like a negative spiraling, and I have to remind myself like, all right, have I done my best, right? And if I haven't, great, like that to me is what I have to do. Like, oh, am I making an assumption right now? Okay, well, what do I know to be true, right? Like, oh, I just had this conversation, didn't really go very well. Was I really intentional with what I was saying?
I feel like this is also like the basis for every relationship ever. And especially if you're trying to build a relationship from scratch, those are 4. Okay, I'm going to go read this book now because that sounds like something.
Oh yeah, I revisit
super helpful.
I revisit the book like every 2 or 3 years because like there's just experiences that I have that are different. And so the book hits different every time. So the first time I read it, it's like, oh, okay, well, this is interesting. And then I went through some real life stuff, right? And I was like, oh, okay, no, this is super helpful. So again, like it could be, because I mean, it's just so easy to like just be in an environment where we can internalize everything. So like this reminder of like, don't take it personal. Mm-hmm. Okay, like a prospect talked to me crazy. Don't take it personal,
Bingo.
So like, oh, hey, there's this one person over here who wants to touch my hair, like, listen, or like, oh, hey, you would imagine that this person is this way. I'm not going to make assumptions, right? I'm not going to take it personal. It's not about me right now. So like, let me just do my best, keep it moving.
I love it. I love it. What's one way someone could have been a better, and I'm not going to use this term because I know we're not big fans of it, but what's one way someone could have been a better mentor or champion to you?
Ooh, that's an interesting, yeah, because we talked about the word ally, and I don't know, I'm jaded from it. A better mentor.
I'd say a better support.
Yeah.
No, I know what I want to
Yeah.
I know what I want to say. I was just thinking about like what's going to be the most impactful thing. Honestly, I think the best thing to do is to listen and to believe the person when they're with what they say.
Mm.
Like I think I was listening to some Brene Brown episode, and they were talking about, especially for women of color, right? Like when they're sharing something with you, rather than try and figure out like, it's like, hey, like, is this real? Is it not? Like, for example, oh, hey, like I worked at a company and there was a CEO at the company, and he made racist jokes all the time. Right. And so I remember like I had somebody that I trusted quite a bit. I went to them and they're like, oh, that's not racist. And I'm like, and so it's just, shut down. I'm like, okay, I can't, this is demotivating, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's no longer supportive, right? That's discouraging. It's demotivating. So I think really to be a better mentor, to be a better sponsor, an advocate, if you want to say ally, right? Like in this regard, I think this is why I say like, I get jaded from that term allies. People go, oh, I'm an ally and here are all my actions, but they never take the time to actually listen and understand and acknowledge, right? So that when they do take action, it's actually impactful. So I just say like, listen and believe the person when they're telling you something.
So flipping it slightly, what's one way you're working to be a better advocate, mentor, sponsor to others?
Listening, getting genuinely and sincerely curious, right? Going back to the 4 agreements, don't make assumptions, speak intentionally, right? Like don't take it, like for me, don't take it personally. So if someone's like, oh, like an SDR on my team, and they feel as though they might be struggling, and like that happened earlier this year, everyone was struggling. And then it's like, oh, GB, you're you're not managing me, you're not coaching me, you're not doing this and that. And I could easily go in there and be like, shut up, right? Or I can go, wow, it's okay. Like, help me understand, like, like what's going on. Help me understand. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong at all, right?
I'm also not necessarily going to agree, but I
yeah,
want to understand.
You listen, I accept. Here's the thing is, it's not a matter of right, wrong, yes, no, agree, disagree, right?
Yeah.
I accept what you're saying. I accept it. So like, I accept that you're giving me this message, and I appreciate the fact that you feel like to me, like the fact that you're telling me this signals some level of trust,
Yes.
right? Because if you did not trust me, you would not tell me. That's big. So we have some level of trust, we have some level of rapport, and I want to expand upon that, right? Because you're saying that I'm not being helpful and I have an intention to be helpful. So there's something in between the intention and the impact, right? And I want to understand that space, and you're the best person to help me with this. So I'm invested in learning from you because I have this aspiration, right? It's beneficial for me to listen to you, to accept what you're sharing with me in a non-judgmental space, right? In a state of observation, and let's explore what that is.
I love that. One thing I've like kind of asked to just, this thought is really, I think it's powerful, and especially for leadership, is whenever somebody comes to me with something like that, like I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, I have made it normal for them to, if they feel that way, then to offer a solution. So like, what is, you're saying I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. What would be an ideal solution for you? So then we can maybe like come to a happy medium. Because like Ashleigh said, like I might not agree with everything you're telling me. I might have a solution in my head that I think is going to work, but if it doesn't work for you, then it's like I'm just imposing on you more so than like really being a resource and doing my job to help you find success.
I'm going to challenge you a little bit on this one, because not everybody actually knows what the solution is. And like, so, again, I was listening to all these Brene Brown podcasts, and there was this, they were talking about a bias towards action. Like this was almost like this bias towards just fixing things. Sometimes people just want to be heard, right?
Yep.
So like, so it's not to say that you're wrong. It's just more, it's like, there's an evolution of the question that you're asking, which could be, hey, what's the best way that I can support you, right? Like I really I want to support you in this moment, and help me understand how I can do that. And here's what it's like, and here's what I'm thinking when I mean this. It's like, do you just need me to listen? Do you want to brainstorm, right? Do you just want to use me as a sounding board? Or do you want me to come up with a solution for you?
Yeah, I love that.
Or do you want this just to be an ongoing discussion? Because I think especially if you're dealing with a performance issue, it might be, I don't know what the answer is. I just know that this isn't working. So then it's okay. Do you know it? And giving that, and I think asking that question really directly can be incredibly powerful, because a lot of times it's, I don't know. Like maybe the trust isn't there. Maybe I don't trust you anymore to come up with a solution for me. Maybe I don't have a solution yet myself, but I know this isn't working. And maybe that's enough for the conversation.
Yeah.
So mirroring is really important too. What I hear you saying is, making sure I understand, am I, is this the same as this? Yeah. And again, I'm with you on the bias towards action thing, because that's something I'm incredibly prone to. I miss jump in and fix it. And it's been a real, early in my career, it was more learning to listen. Now it's learning to wait.
Yep.
And spread these things out sometimes, especially if it's a really loaded issue. It's, hey,
it depends.
Let's keep talking. Let's both take a step away, keep thinking about it, focus on maybe these 2 or 3 things, and let's talk again in a day or two. Sometimes these things need time.
Yeah. Because it depends. Like if you got into kind of a point of like, there's not trust for a solution, and there's performance issues. To me, like the ongoing conversation is more like, hey, listen, it's like, hey, listen, how about this? Like, I'll sometimes with certain conversations that I'll have with reps, the action, right? The quote unquote solution or the ongoing discussion is, it starts with like something that, let's both ask ourselves a question, right? It's like, we'll give each other a prompt, and we'll meet back in 2 days after we've had some time to answer that prompt. So such as I had some reps where it was very, very obvious that like there was just a mismatch, right? And it wasn't the fact that they couldn't do the SDR role, right? It might've been the culture, the processes, the expectation, like there was a disconnect. It wasn't a great fit for anyone involved. And so at that point in time, it wasn't like it wasn't like, oh, hey, let's try and figure out how to make it work here. It was, hey, it seems as though this bridge or this path has been scorched. And so I want to stop the bleeding here and like discuss and it's almost like we got to the point where we agreed, let's discuss and exit out that where everyone preserves their dignity.
Yep.
Right. And so it was much more like, all right, cool. So I've had those conversations with folks where we come up with a strategy for an exit, right? Where everyone maintains their dignity.
Yep.
I love that. Final question. What is your guilty pleasure after a bad day?
Can't just be asking me these questions.
All right, well, we'll just edit out the answers.
No, I'll answer the question, you edit it out, but no, earlier this year, it was like, okay, like, let me go smoke a bowl. I'm like, all right, I'm not going to do that. That's not the guilty pleasure that I take part in. Guilty pleasure. Honestly, ordering Uber Eats. I think someone shared this of like, all right, hey, how much money are we spending on like ordering out? For me, my guilty pleasure really is ordering out.
There is something so luxurious about having good food and not having to have cooked it and
Or to
just
go
toss it,
somewhere.
or to do
right?
dishes.
Yeah.
Let's just chuck it away.
My wife and I
Because there's
definitely
like there's like the aspiration of like, oh, I'm gonna cook, right? I'm gonna make myself a meal, hashtag self-care, and then rough day hits, and I'm just like, did I even eat? I can't get
Yeah.
up from my bed right now.
I know the
So
feeling.
like, but I'll get up from my bed in 30 minutes to just answer the door.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's it for the lightning round, and definitely appreciate you joining us, Gabby. This has been the huge value, great use of my morning on this Friday before the 4th of July.